The same old problems, I thought I solved them. Fell so far, I broke through the bottom. Wound up back at square one, losing a battle that I thought.
All right. This is the Behind the Wall podcast. This week we got Mike Davis, but before we get to the interview, just want to give a shout out to our sponsor. This interview is brought to you by Dano Seasoning. Add some spice to your life with some Dan Good seasoning. Use our code Behind the Wall at checkout. Mike, good to have you back. We met before on the Pocono podcast, but it's good to get you on our own turf here so we can pick your brain for a bit.
Man, I'm on your home field turf. Yeah, it feels totally different. You know, Pocono, it feels better than Pocono, actually. So well done on that. How y'all doing?
Pretty good. Can't complain. You know, this is week 4 of the NASCAR season, and it's been exciting so far. But you know, this interview is all about you, so I guess I'll go ahead and just jump into it. First question, you're you're a brand director for Junior Motorsports along with digital content stuff. So what kind of, do you find that you have a financial benefit to having drivers with a large large and loud personality like a Noah Gregson?
Oh, what a good question right out of the gate. A financial benefit? I look at it as a benefit. I don't think I look at it as a financial benefit. Maybe there is financial benefits to people like Noah Gregson, but let me tell you this. I'll answer it this way. The first driver I ever worked for was Jimmy Spencer. Okay. Y'all familiar with him?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
At this point of his career, it was definitely winding down. So I don't know how much financial benefit that necessarily was, you know, for whether it would be the race teams. I mean, he got fired in my time with him. He got fired by Chip Ganassi in his first year. The Jim Smith year, I went with him in 2003 to Cup. We had a sponsor, but then that was sort of short-lived. I guess my point on this is I don't know how financially prosperous the Jimmy Spencer, you know, time was. From a brand standpoint, it was invaluable for me. I mean, like, wouldn't trade it for the world. Are you kidding? I was a PR guy. I didn't have to work that hard, to be honest. I was willing to work hard, and I hope I worked hard, but I'm telling you, I didn't have to generate attention. Now, sometimes it wasn't positive attention. You know, when you slap another driver in the face and he's still in his car and you get suspended a couple of weeks, you know, some might think that's negative, but we built a lot of great PR opportunities with Jimmy, and it allowed me from a creative standpoint to do things that otherwise I would never have had the opportunity to do. I looked at Jimmy Spencer, and then I look at Dale Jr., who then I went to work for in 2004. Completely different types of personalities, but both very valuable to me from a brand standpoint and for their own respective reasons. You know, Dale Jr. is not brash, but, you know, I think that there's a brand of authenticity with each of them. You know what you got. And I think there's value to that. So, you know, I just don't know how, like, so going back to Noah, like, I look at Noah the same way. Like, Noah, the day I saw him, the day he was in our shop, I was like, man, that kid is raw. I mean, raw. He's going to be fun for whoever his PR rep is. But you know what? I say that as a compliment to him. Exactly. Because of what I came from. And I would much rather, I would much rather have that than Paul Menard. What are you going to do with the Paul Menard? Now, that's a good point, actually. Is Paul Menard financially, what was your question? Financially beneficial? Is that how you asked it? Well, yes. I think so, considering his dad owns that chain of, you know, like, yeah, there's finances there. That thing covers the bill. Would you want him to build your brand on?
Probably not. You want someone like a Gregson. I mean, I would, especially after this past weekend, and you see his post-race, or I guess post-crash interview. Someone like that, they can drive content, they can drive clicks. I mean, I'm looking at it from your standpoint. I'm seeing this as a gold mine.
Yeah, look, you're gonna get days where you're like, "What, dude? He's a kid." I mean, you're gonna get them. And you're gonna sometimes get aggravated but I'm just telling you, I look at these drivers and I find value in places that you can't go replicate very easily. Like it's in their fabric, it's in their DNA. That kid right there, there's a lot of things people can say bad against him. They can call him, hey, his dad's got deep pockets and therefore he pays his right. You could say, oh, he, doesn't respect his elders. I know better. I know how much he invests. I know how much he works at his craft. I know how much, these personal attacks bother him. I think his style is just, it is what it is. And I think that he's going to mature and one day probably regret some of the things, as we all have. We all have things we've regretted back when we were that age. And you guys are sort of that age, but I'm telling you that there's things that you may regret having me on this podcast. And you'll be like, God, if we were smarter, we'd have never done that. That was a fail. So, but yeah, you live and learn.
Yeah, absolutely. No doubt. And I just want to jump into talking about Dirty Mo a little bit. And question I got for you is how when Dirty Mo sponsored Ross Chastain last year at Darlington, was it cool to see a company that you've helped grow so much have that brand on a race car in a Cup Series race?
Look at that right there. Isn't that a good looking car?
Beautiful.
Yes, sir.
That's a pre-pro right there. I'm for all you podcast listeners, I'm holding this beautiful diecast car of our 77 from Darlington last year. All right, what was your question again? I got lost in the beauty of that diecast.
Yeah, no worries. It was what was it like to see a company you've helped grow so much over the years on a race car in a Cup Series race like that?
It was amazing, and it wasn't why I did that, but it was amazing. It was an opportunity that came up, and I kind of look at us to be similar in terms of our work ethic and our brand is that Spire Motorsports. Like I don't think, it was just an opportunity and it was the right fit, and I took it because I thought it would produce good content. I didn't think that I was going to get the ROI necessarily in the Joyce, Julius, or Replicom reports of the race. I wasn't sure if you were going to see our car, to be honest with you, on the broadcast or whatever. But I knew that being on that car, I could generate a bunch of content myself. And I know that, down the hall is a guy named Joe Mattis, who basically is the titan in the licensing and merchandising industry. And he could, put out a t-shirt. And by the way, I knew that Dale Jr. would be behind it because we were going to let him design his t-shirt. And then, so just like it gave me an opportunity to make some content. And so that's why I did it. But, when I see Dirty Mo Media brand anywhere, I do have a sense of pride. Anything that you really kind of like work really hard on and you see it start to manifest a little bit, and you see the fruits of your labor. I mean, yeah, it feels great. And that's the feeling. The other thing is I went to the race. I went to Darlington, and that was at a time when nobody was going to races.
Exactly.
And we had been in quarantine for a while. And so I was just glad to get out of the house. I would have bought that sponsorship just for the field trip. Yeah. So
That's awesome.
I'm going to tell you another thing, Adam.
Yeah.
Nobody knows it. Like, when is this podcast going to drop? I got to know right now.
Tuesday or Wednesday.
Okay. So I'll give you this. I'm going to, on a show, probably on next Tuesday's show, I'm going to reveal that we're going to be on one of these dirt cars at Bristol, not Cup, not NASCAR. What is it is it IMCA? These dirt cars. A buddy of mine has one, and Dirty Mo's going to be on it, and I'm going to tell our guys on the show, and I'm just as proud of that. I mean, that's fun. These are the guys that are going to go. They haven't been to Bristol, and they haven't run. The driver of this car has never even been at Bristol Motor Speedway.
Wow.
They are literally the guinea pigs on this dirt track. They are going to be the first ones on. They are going to wad up stuff. I mean, they are. But I think I would rather do that than go overspend somewhere else in some sort of advertising thing that I would, not really get the personal satisfaction. And so a lot of that stuff is that. Like, I haven't told Matthew Dillner yet. These guys are going to geek out over that.
That's
No
really
doubt.
cool. I understand what you're going by, because we have a couple guys who run RI racing schemes, like put our logo in. As you, it's on the Cup Series car. It's such a sense of pride, but just like seeing your brand on anything is really cool. But we talked about your story when we did the Pocono podcast and how like you got into racing. But I want to know who had the biggest influence on you when you were entering the sport.
Oh, biggest influence on me. There were several. First of all, I credit Jimmy Spencer on a lot of things, and he doesn't even know how he would have influenced me and stuff. But in terms of the business that I'm in, look, the people that took a shot on me, they didn't even know what they were getting. So you always feel indebted to the people that, took a chance in hiring you. And there was a company, it doesn't exist anymore, but it was called the Motorsports Decisions Group, and Danielle Randall was the boss, and I'm still friends with her today. And I credit her a lot. I feel like I'm always been a writer at heart, and I still consider myself that. And so, I have a lot of places that I drew inspiration in terms of how my style of writing is. A guy by the name of Roy Exum, who was my boss in Chattanooga. I was a high school kid and then in college, and he hired me. And, I just always sort of emulated a lot of his writing techniques and stuff. I just, I'm trying, I could come up with a bunch of lists, actually. I could come up, there's a guy named Mark McCarter who, when I was in college, I don't even know how much of this stuff I revealed to you guys, but like there was a guy that had no business helping me out. He didn't, Mark McCarter just put me in touch with people, that just to help me out. I was still at Georgia Southern. That literally led to my job, and I would have never realized it. And it didn't happen immediately. It happened, months later, but like, there were people that really kind of helped you out. And I think you guys will remember those types of people. I was actually, a good exercise is when Dale Jr. got elected into the Hall of Fame for this next class, whenever we're able to do that, we started talking about the speech. And you think, okay, what if you were going into a Hall of Fame and you got 5 minutes to thank everybody in your entire life who helped you get there? Okay. You start to try to think, okay, who are those people, right? Go through that exercise, and you all of a sudden end up with a lot of people. And when you've literally dedicated the time to, oh, that's right, this person, man, I actually wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that. I mean, wow, that little gesture or that little thing here. And next thing you know, you got a lot of people that helped you out along the way. Maybe it's your parents, maybe it's, this or that, and the other. But when you go through the exercise of, I got here today by the help of who, that list, there's a lot of people. And it's something that I enjoy doing, just not that I'm not going into a Hall of Fame, but it doesn't mean that you can't sit there and go and spend some time thinking about if you were getting recognized for some honor and you had to thank people, who would those people be? It's kind of fun to do.
Yeah, I can only imagine how large the list would be for y'all, especially at this point with junior motorsports and how big Dirty Mo Media has grown at the same time. But got another question for you. One of the big reasons we started Behind the Wall Media was to have an outlet to talk about NASCAR and create content and find a way to get other fans into the sport who maybe don't know what NASCAR is, don't have a passion for it, but to show why we love the sport, and maybe that they'll come in and realize that, hey, they like it in the same way. But so we really focus on content creation, and that's one of the best things about having this media group, is because the sky's the limit. You can come up with any kind of content you want. But how has the pandemic affected Junior Motorsports' approach to content creation?
Well, I'll rephrase your question for a little bit, because like when it comes to Junior Motorsports content creation, we certainly do stuff with the entity of Junior Motorsports, but Dirty Mo Media, like this year, I'm launching podcasts with new podcasts that are other drivers, other race teams, just from a growth perspective. I don't want to be just pigeonholed into a Junior Motorsports box. And so what I'm trying to make Dirty Mo Media to be is something that, you know, we cover a lot more ground than just on this, you know, cul-de-sac here in Mooresville. So, but that being said, the pandemic, man, it was such a weird situation, because we were shooting a television show. That was hard. You're halfway through a television production, this one called Lost Speedways, and you've shot literally 50% of it, and then you get quarantined for months and you can't travel anywhere. And so what we had to do is rewrite it. Like, we shot most of the tracks, but we had to rewrite our whole approach to that, so that, because we knew we weren't going to be able to travel. We didn't know when we were going to be able to go to another track. So what I did, like, I'll give you guys a little bit of, I haven't really told anybody this, but like, are y'all familiar with this series by any chance?
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
the series on Peacock.
Did you see it?
Yeah, I've seen actually the first time I saw it was during a rain delay, where, you know, everyone just kind of started watching at the same time, but I was intrigued and ended up watching more episodes after that.
So the original idea on this Lost Speedways was that we were going to showcase several tracks per episode, and we were going to use an entire first segment where Dale Jr. and Matthew were going to be sitting together, chit-chatting about places they could go, and they could and they were going to go through this gamut of racetracks, and we were going to sort of show, you know, photos and videos of these racetracks as they're talking, and then ultimately by the end of a first segment, they sort of come to some conclusion of where they want to go, and then they go. All right. So then it's sort of like they go on this trip. All right. That was the plan. But when we got quarantined and then the pandemic hit, and it looked, you know, like it looked as severe as it was, it's like, okay, we're not going to be going anywhere. So now all of a sudden you got, first of all, we're one track per episode. We don't have multiple tracks per episode, can't get to them. We've shot 7 tracks. We've got 8 episodes. We've shot 7. So we know that we're going to have 1 track per episode. I still got this problem of an 8th, but I'll cross that bridge when we get there. Let's rewrite the beginning. Now I'm going to, instead of having, I can't have Dale Jr. and Matthew in the same room because social distancing. I mean, like again, if you take yourself back to this time a year ago, everybody had the plague. I mean, like if somebody so much as coughed, you're like, oh my God, I got to go get tested. And so it's like, you know, having them in the same room. I mean, like I'm sitting there going, gosh, how are we going to do? I can't do that. So now we got to have Dale Jr. just deliver a cold open. Like I got to write out some sort of way to tee up these episodes. And then it's going to get right into an exploration of the track. So that was a big adjustment that we did like late in the game. And then I still had the problem of this last episode. And if you guys watch the series, the last episode is Dale Jr.'s home. It's Dirty Mo Acres, his overgrown dirt track there. That was not the plan. Our plan was to be out in California. The track we were shooting was right outside of San Francisco. This is all while that cruise ship they wouldn't even let it dock. Do y'all remember this? That cruise ship, this is where the very early cases of COVID, where this cruise ship had all these COVID positive people and they're sick and they won't even let the ship dock. Well, that was right off the coast of San Francisco. They certainly weren't letting flights come in. And so we ended up, instead of going to California, we ended up doing this episode at home. And I wrote it to be part of the plan. Like, I've showed you 7 racetracks. but if you really want to know why this is important to me, I got to show you my place here in North Carolina, and maybe it'll make sense, you know. And so I was like, Dale Jr.'s like, this is never going to work. This is awful. This is never going to work. Nobody cares about this. And I'm like, look, we'll make him care. I mean, listen, you got a cool place. You've got this graveyard with a bunch of race cars in it. I can do something with that. You got an actual dirt track. If I can get some footage of some of the crap y'all used to pull, I can make an episode out of this. Turns out it ended up being a lot of people's favorite episode. So that, like, look, pandemic affected that completely, but I was adamant that we were going to deliver this project on time to the buyer, which in this case was NBC and Peacock. And when everybody else in their life was going to let them down, all these big Hollywood production companies and their big shows and their big budgets and all this stuff, and they were going to have to cancel till the fall, or they were going to have to postpone and give them money back, whatever. I wanted us and our little band of misfit, content creators to be the ones that actually delivered this thing on time. And we were when Peacock launched, I think we were one of only 4 of the original programs that actually delivered on time and was there for the launch like it was intended. Ryan Lochte had a kind of a little documentary that was up there. And so yeah. And so that's that. Now, as far as the podcast go, look, we did what everybody else had to do. We had to go Zoom for a while. Dale couldn't have hated it more, but we all kind of understood. From a advertiser standpoint, I think we're starting to, you know what? I think we're feeling the effects of it a little bit now. There was a lot of advertisers that were locked into the podcast. And so as long as we were still doing podcasts, they were sort of locked into it. And I don't know, how much you guys like follow your analytics. I try not to do it at all on my end. But our analytics didn't really drop off, but it might have dipped a little bit. But as far as the advertisers go, they were sort of locked into stuff and we were still producing content. But like now, I think there's a little bit of anxiety in the market where people are not quite ready to go investing dollars in podcasts right now until these vaccines start playing out a little bit more and until things start to get a little bit more normal. I think we're getting there. And we're doing fine on that, but I think that's sort of that's ultimately the effect. We ended up, look, as a company in Dirty Mo Media, we turned a profit. It was the same type of profit I was hoping to expect when I budgeted at the beginning of the year. And so I had no complaints. We had a project that we were able to sustain and deliver on time. That's all I wanted to do. What a long answer to that question. Sorry about that. I think the podcast is now over, isn't it?
Nah, that was an awesome answer. And the show was phenomenal. If you wouldn't have told us that, I would have thought that's how it was planned out the whole time. But I have
that's why I said, look, we can't make excuses. We got to make this look as if it was the plan all along. That was what we had to do. That's how I wrote it. It's how every line was delivered. And then when we had, and real quick, I want to say another thing on that. After the first look at that episode, it wasn't good enough. I said, you know what? We haven't got it and we need something else. We talk about a fight where Kelly got into a fight with another lady during a go-kart match or go-kart race, and I'm like, but I don't have Kelly's voice in this and we don't have footage of it. So I need to have Kelly. So we go out like a week before we delivered this thing to Peacock, we went out and reshot it with Kelly. And I thought that added a lot additional perspective in it. And so all those little things ended up making it a really good episode, I felt.
That's awesome. So you have the Dale Jr. download, which is a very serious sit down conversation. And then on the totally other page, you got Door Bumper Clear, which is Freddie, TJ, Brett, all just having a good time pretty much. So you got these two like vastly different podcasts, but where do you see the future of podcasting going? It's definitely changed over the years.
I think podcasts are cyclical. I think if you go back and look at the history of podcasts, when ESPN started doing them, it hit a stride. When comedians started using them, like they would plateau a little bit, and then when like comedians started getting in and doing them, they hit another stride. And I think it hits these waves like everything else. I look, this is how I feel about podcasts. As long as they are making automobiles with very podcast friendly and like where you now, can hit it on your dash or and listen, and as long as there are commutes and as long as there are gyms, like video can't be the only way we deliver content. There's got to be that audio medium. And so what I want us to do is, and why I like guys like you is like, look, one is you're doing what you're talking about, what you like, you know who you are, you know what your identity is, you know who your audience is. And frankly, if you didn't have an audience, would you still do it? Well, in your case, you probably would, because this is what you guys are going to talk about racing anyways, right? I'm of the thing of like, listen, I don't, the Dale Jr. Download and Door Bumper Clear, they all have a lifespan. And as long as we're having fun doing it and we're getting fulfillment out of it, that's great. Podcasts themselves, though, I hope to be making them for a long time. Different podcasts. I just think that they give you, a different type of medium in which you can, appreciate and enjoy things. Some people don't read; they listen to audiobooks. Some people don't. I mean, like there's a crowd for everything. But the automobiles, I'm telling you, that's a big one for podcasts. Like the fact that I can get into my truck and I drive a half hour to work every day. And that's when, like on Tuesday mornings, when I'm literally driving into work to go take the download, I will listen to Door Bumper Clear because, maybe I've started it, maybe I haven't, but I'm listening to it and hearing it for the first time on Tuesday mornings. As soon as I get to work, I hit pause or I take it off, do the download. I'll get back to the DBC and listen to the rest of it when I can. Very versatile, very flexible, can adapt it around my time. Great for trips, great for flights. It doesn't require a lot of bandwidth, easy to download, doesn't kill your memory. I mean, like there's so many benefits to it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Mike, thanks for coming out this week. And to everyone listening, make sure you go follow him on Twitter at Mike Davis 88. Absolute blast to follow. And make sure you're tuning into Dale Jr. Download, Door Bumper Clear, and Lost Speedways. I mean, they're Junior Motorsports and Dirty Mo. They're putting out so much great content, and they'll get you interested in just about anything. But Mike, thanks for coming out this week. We really appreciate it.
Well, thanks to both of you. I always enjoy talking to you guys. I hope we do it again. And if you ever need anything, certainly let me know. All right.
Certainly.
Awesome. Thank you.